accent that you've come to recognize for the last 4 years, and you hear, "Opens the door! Opens the door!" Get up from the table, hesitantly, reluctantly. Your heart is pounding. You feel this sick gnawing in your stomach, this sense of powerlessness as you make your way inevitably to the door. And in your mind, you can already envision what you're going to see. And you open the door, and standing there is a German officer, surrounded by his cohort. And he says to you, "Out of your house!" You just look at him. And he says to you, "Out of the house now!" What do? The year is 1944, May, 70 years ago today. Scene takes place in central Italy, about an hour southeast of Rome in the mountains, the mountain country. If you're in that situation, what do? Do you get up and leave? Do you stay? Not knowing what the German officer and his contingent might do to you? And if you leave, where do you go? Do you go to a neighbor's house? Stranger? Say, "We've been put out of our house by the Germans again?" What do? Well, the backstory to this is in 1940, Benito Mussolini and his government allied with the Nazis, with the Germans. They declared war on Poland and the rest of the Allied nations and joined with Germany. Unlike Germany, the Italian Army, Air Force, Navy was just not that well equipped. They were a fractured country, unlike Germany, made up of kingdoms and provinces, significant differences between the northern part of Italy, which bordered France and Switzerland, and the southern part of Italy, deep in the Mediterranean. People were not unified as to who they wanted to be aligned with. Those in the north wanted to be aligned with Germany. Those in the south wanted to be aligned with the Allies. Well, after 2.5 years of fighting with Germany and losing battle after battle after battle, Benito Mussolini was ousted. And in September of 1943, the Allies, particularly the British and Americans, began a series of campaigns in Italy. Winston Churchill called Italy the soft underbelly of Europe. The Allies had been planning an invasion in France against Hitler's European wall. But they needed to pull troops away from that theater of combat. They needed to ease the pressure. And so they launched campaigns from northern Africa into Italy. They landed in Sicily, Salerno, and if you've ever seen the movie Patton, you remember those different battles going on in Patton and Montgomery, striving like two runners, who's going to get to the finish line first, landing in Sicily and trying to go around and then wanting to make into the main peninsula of Italy. Well, by late in 1943, when Benito Mussolini had been deposed, the new ruling class of Italy decided to secretly join the Allies. Imagine being an Italian citizen at this time, similar to the French citizens, where part of your country is allied with Germany, and part of your country is allied with US and British, tension going on. Who are you with? Who are you against? A little bit like the Civil War in the United States. Not a lot of clarity. Moving through 1943, as the Allies continued to move up the boot of Italy, preparing for their inevitable invasion in France, The Germans, recognizing that essentially they had been duped, that now our allies are allied with our enemies, the British and the Americans, the British moved up into Italy. The Americans moved up into Italy, one going up one side of the coast, the other up the other side. Sort of began racing, Patton and Montgomery, who's going to get to Rome first. The Germans did what the Allies hoped, sent reinforcements into Italy. Well, what did that mean for the Italian citizens? It meant that your house could be taken over at any time by German forces. There's this tension between the Germans and the Italians. Germans say things to the Italians like, you know, we Germans sure like you Italians, but we don't respect you. And the Italians reply to them, you know, we Italians sure respect you Germans, but we don't like you. That was the tension going on. German forces would move through these Italian villages, especially mountain communities, where they had good view of the surrounding countryside, of the valleys. Well, that was what was going on in this story that I began with. German forces had strengthened along what was called the Gustav Line, which essentially ran right across Italy. If you can imagine Italy just running down south in the Mediterranean, kind of find Rome, the central western coast or the Mediterranean, just run a line straight east. You're going to cut Italy in half. That was called the Gustav Line. A series of mountains, heavily fortified defenses, and so the Germans had been moving forward and falling back of that line as the Allies would advance, and so the Germans would move into towns. They would take people's homes, they would kick people out, then they would move forward and advance, the people would move back into their homes. There's tension of back and forth. Back into your house, get kicked out, back and forth. Well, that was what had been going on with these families. In this little city called Strangola Galli, it was about 2,500 people. And for 2 years that this had been going on. And this particular family lived in a house that was up at the highest point of the town. And so they had commanding view of the town, of the fields, of the valleys below, and the Germans loved to occupy it because of its position. May of 1944, where the story started. The Allied advance is moving on. German commander is determined he's going to take this house because his forces have been backed up, and the Allies are advancing. But this time, this man, roughly 35, wife pregnant, 3 kids already there, he says no. Tells the German commander, I'm not leaving. The German commander says to him, you will be gone. If your family is here tomorrow, we shoot you all. If you are here in the morning, we shoot you all. Man's relatives plead with him, leave, don't stay, they will kill you. He says, I'm not leaving. Tired of being pushed around by them, I'm not leaving. Evening came. Family wondered what to do. Tension mounted. Germans were prepared to come in the morning and kill the family if need be. They didn't leave. That night, the Allies moved through town, swept the Germans out. Led by a British expeditionary force, the Germans continued their retreat north, and that town never again was occupied by Germans. The man who faced the Germans that night, his name was Aldo Tomassi, my grandfather. In 1959, when Italy's economy was in desperate trouble, he left his ancestral home, put his family on a ship, 7 days later arrived in the New World to start a new life for them. So I owe much to my grandfather, who was unwilling to be bullied by the Germans and unwilling to sit where he had known all his life and all his family's life so he could try something new in the new world for his family. Thank you.